My name is Faiz Parkar. I look after Pivotal's go-to-market here in Europe, Middle East and Africa. And what we're going to do now is just really have a bit of an open discussion with some of our keynote speakers and a couple of other people which I'll introduce in just a moment. So what we want to do here is just have more of an interactive discussion around some of the themes that we've talked about this morning, some of the concepts that have come out, some of the best practices and recommendations, some of the trends that we've heard about, and explore those in a little bit more detail. And then what we'll do also is open up to some questions from the floor as well. So while you think about what those questions might be, I'll just briefly introduce who's on the panel, and then we'll get going. So Rob, you've already met our CEO. Tim, you've already met our keynote speaker this morning. Dieter from Volkswagen, you've also heard from. Xavier, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Wow. So I'm Xavier Perret. I work within Orange, the telecommunication company. I'm doing the digital transformation, so Chief Digital Officer for the B2B market, which is basically ranging from SMBs, so all the plumbers, lawyers, attorneys, or whatever, up to big enterprise and enterprises.
Thanks. And if you'd like to pass along to James.
Hi, yeah, James Stickland. So I'm the CEO of a fintech startup called Red Deer. I've been on the, I would like to say the tough side of it for the last 7 or 8 years at HSBC and JP Morgan, and we're just coming out of stealth in a new fintech digital startup.
Okay, so we've got quite a mix here of established enterprises as well as fintechs being represented here in the panel as well. So have a think about what questions you might want to put to them. What I thought I'd do is maybe just to get things started is, we've heard a lot about change and how disruption is causing change in many organizations. And it means that we need to solve problems in different ways, different problems in new ways. So this quote, I think, here from Albert Einstein kind of sums up the core thing which we're trying to achieve here, which is that we can't solve the problems of the past using the same approaches as we used in the past. Otherwise, we're just going to be going around in circles. We need to come up with new ways to solve these new problems. So the question that I've got for the panel, just to get things going, is, what changes in thinking do we need to bring about in order to be successful as a digital business? And I'll start first, I guess, with maybe Dieter, because you touched on it a little bit in your talk around, you talked about a bimodal strategy and you talked about sprinting and marathoning. So what does that mean for Volkswagen?
Well, I guess I'm not an official spokesperson for Volkswagen, yeah. So everything I'm telling you here is just my personal interpretation of what's going on. But again, I guess our company was or is famous for great cars, yeah, with several brands. But I guess sometimes we felt in the past that was enough. So just bring a great product, and then the products will find their customers by themselves, and that will change. That has to change. We need to be closer to our customers. We need to understand what they need. We need to be more agile. So the product changes, and I guess that's something where the old style thinking, just design and produce a fantastic car, and that will be enough. Well, that's not. We still need to have kind of the best product on the market, but there is an add-on. There's that nearness to the customer and the agility to fuel kind of the mobility services of the future, and that's kind of our playing field, and that's our strategic advantage. Combining kind of the old world and the new world, and that will go a long way for us.
So from what you said earlier in your talk, you were talking about Volkswagen, and it sounded like you were reinventing it more as a software company. There's Volkswagen and all the automotive manufacturers have been known for producing great physical products, right? The cars, and you looked at the miles per hour, and you looked at the miles per gallon, and you looked at the luxury interior inside. And do you see that in your customer base? People are asking more for digital type features to differentiate which car they buy?
Yeah, that depends on the market you're looking at. There are more traditional markets where that is interesting. yeah, to have functionality like that. There are other markets, like South Korea, Asia Pacific, and other markets where China, for example, yeah, where you need to have connectivity.
Yeah.
So they don't buy the car because of its brand, they buy the car because of its functionality, yeah, and especially in kind of the smart space, in the digital space. So therefore, I guess you have to look at the individual regions differently. Americas is different to Europe, is different to Asia Pacific, yeah, but you have to have that kind of capability. Yeah? So therefore, yes, definitely we're seeing that in different regions of the world, that the demand is rising, yeah, and we can see that. So therefore, I guess the next generation of cars will be all electric, will be interconnected, and the differentiator will be kind of the user interface.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where JJ, our CDO, comes into play. So great ideas, and we showed that last year with the Buddy. That's kind of a new car, a new concept, how to interact with the driver. And I guess with the event of self-driving cars, that will change a lot. Yeah, so therefore it's important to have the strength of the brand, but then also kind of technology helping to change the way we are interacting with our cars.
So that's really useful. Thanks, Dieter. Volkswagen obviously has been established for many years. Xavier, for Orange, and we haven't heard from Xavier, is going to be giving his talk on digital transformation at Orange this afternoon, so we don't want to give away too much.
Don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, but what does digital disruption mean for Orange?
I think the first, I mean, what's important is that our users are changing and they are more demanding. So we come from that, in fact. So basically what happens is, well, look at you guys, you just want a network to work, right? So what kind of relationship do you want from a telecommunication operators, like Orange or any of them? Is basically you don't want a relationship with them. You just want things to work. And that's simple as that. But so what we say internally is that we want to create what we call an incomparable experience. That's going to differentiate us, by the way, from the competitors. But basically it means we don't waste the time of our clients. So what does it mean in terms of the digital is we need to be quick, we need to answer their questions in a way, we need to acknowledge that they're going to interact with them however they want to do. I mean, if they will message, if they want going to call or whatever, but we're going to be there for them when it matters. I think the difficulty is then, and I don't know if it's a disruption for that, but it's definitely a trend, is that they would expect more immediacy. And the network doesn't work, you want it to be solved right now. You don't want to wait. So before, maybe our generation was used to wait. Okay, well, I'll wait for 24 hours, that's fine, I know network is complicated. The younger generation, they don't want to wait for that. And it's exactly when Uber is coming to new city, I mean, basically, people are, when Uber is coming, you would expect from the original legacy taxis to be better. I mean, it increases customer satisfaction for that. So our challenge for whatever you call this digital disruption is how do you get those customers satisfied because they're going to stay with you? Because in the end, network is so critical and important for you guys in your life, whether it's an enterprise or if for the personal reasons, that you would accept to pay for something for that, provided that, hey, I mean, you don't waste your time with your relationship with Orange.
Yeah, thanks. So there's a common theme there that you can't move away from excellence in your traditional products, but that you need to add digital capabilities to differentiate and add value above your core offering.
Correct. And I think the difficulty in all big organizations, like probably yours, is how do you change processes in the end? I mean, it's just like an application you have to change. You have to change the mentality of processes that has been built in an old world, and you have to transform them. Obviously, you get the legacy IT system or whatever we've talked about earlier this morning, but basically, how do you reshuffle them to now connect to someone who is really more demanding in a sense. Mm-hmm. So it could be as simple as how do you activate a mobile subscription up to I'm not going to call, I'm just going to message that I've got a problem on my network, and I would expect Orange to already know that I've got a problem on my network.
Awesome. Okay. So we've heard from two established businesses. James, tell us a little bit about Red Deer, perhaps not as well known as the other two brands next to you. What's your take on what's happening in the finance industry and digital disruption?
Yeah, so I've come from the sort of established side of the world at JP and HSBC, and having left just over a year ago now to focus on a fintech, I still think financial services is a massively kind of underserved digital, opportunity. So, not to do the sales pitch, we built a workflow management system to try and integrate content. The challenge that in the specific industry of asset managers or buy side or investors at large is, they're still consuming data in exactly the same way that they were 25 years ago. So, I owned a big budget at JP Morgan to spend on market data providers. Funnily enough, that budget's gone up, not down. So the appetite for consumption is huge. People want to consume data in a far more effective fashion and a far more kind of digital orientated fashion. And this is kind of a pivotal time, to pardon the pun, for people to actually start to consume content in a sort of readily open API kind of fashion. So, and not to lambast the old world, but the Bloombergs or the Thomson Reuters are still kind of very tethered to workstations and sort of driving content down very old school routes. People don't want to consume that way. If you're a hedge fund or if you're an asset manager or if you're a buy side or a sell side institution, there's so much rich content out there that you can't actually try and consume in the current format. So I think there's a huge digital revolution as it relates to data within financial services. And this is a kind of start point. People are now kind of readily available and readily keen to take the risk on doing that because the upside's there. I think the apathy that's kind of existed in institutions, at large over the last kind of 5 or 6 years or even 10 years, is slowly kind of ebbing away, and people are now realizing that they have to do these things as opposed to that they want to do these things. The team from Allstate mentioned this kind of frozen middle at a dinner last night, and I think that resonates very clearly. There's a bunch of kind of middle management that have been the sort of sticking point for this across every industry. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that continues over the next 5 years. I don't think the businesses can afford to wait. So, digital's now taking its lead from the business as opposed to maybe from IT where you would expect it to have come from. And the business is grappling and really either going to partner with or is going to take control of that whole kind of ecosystem, and will hopefully play a part of that.
So a question for the audience there, this idea of the frozen middle, which James just mentioned there, meaning from the top down, there's a kind of drive towards wanting to do things in a different way, and there's a drive from the bottom upwards for a grassroots movement to want to do things in a different way. In how many of your organizations do you feel like things are getting stuck in the middle? Is that something that you'd agree with, or, yeah? Is that something that you came across, Dieter or Xavier, in your organizations, and what did you do to address that middle management?
Well, I guess as always, when you talk about large organizations, to align a large organization to strategy, that's always kind of a huge task. And I guess what we see in our company is a major significant cultural change, where new ways of working are being tested. So therefore, some of us are adopting very, very quickly. Others will need a bit more time to see the value of that. So it's a huge task. Don't underestimate that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Xavier.
And I mean, in the same way, I think in a big organization like Orange, you get two levels. You get the middle managers and the one who are in charge of projects. And we're not that bad in terms of agility, but that's what I'm going to explain later today. I think we can be even more agile to be more quicker and to really build minimum viable products and so on the market so that we can test continuously with customers. At the same time, though, we do have a lot of resources and workforces that are existing that are not the same level at all. All of our friends, for example, which are the sales rep, for examples, where they need also to understand the impact on digital on their own work, which is a tough sell, to be honest, because it's not like they're not going to have a job anymore, in fact. At least that's our thinking internally within Orange. On the contrary, they're going to be there for what matters to the customers, because in any case, in the end, even if the customers can digitally, I would say, interact with us, sometimes it will have a more complex question. It will need someone human. And so that mix between digital and human and the way we're going to accompany our forces internally is also kind of a key question in terms of the digital transformation we're experiencing today.
Okay. So Rob, let's bring it back to you. So we've heard from 3 different customers from 3 different verticals in 3 different countries in Europe. does this resonate with what you hear from other customers that you work with in the other parts of the world, in the US, in Asia Pacific, or are some of these things specific to Europe?
I don't think that the challenges that European companies face are terribly different from those that we face, that companies face in the U.S. I think that the problems and the ways that people approach the transformation and the types of workforces that they have can vary from company to company. You see some companies that have been focused on technology capability for a number of years, and their management structures reflect that. And so they look at incremental improvements, and they're in a relatively good place. You see some other companies that have completely eliminated their software technology workforce. And they are very concerned about restarting that, and they just don't know where to begin. Mm-hmm. So we have to hire developers. We haven't done that for a decade. Right. What do we do? And so they're in that shape. So, and I've seen that on both sides of the Atlantic, and I think we're seeing the same things in with our Asian customers. It really depends on the company, but these problems, I don't think I see particular patterns geographically. I think they're across the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's open up for questions from the floor. So we have this thing called a catch box. You can probably guess by the name what it's about. So if you'd like to ask a question, put your hand up. I throw you the mic. Hopefully without hitting anybody on the head. It's cushioned, so I think we should be safe. I think we're insured. If you've got any questions, let's ask for the panel. Question there at the back. Testing my arm here.
So do a relay.
Okay. Yeah, let's try over here. Yeah.
Actually out of the building.
Okay, so I actually have 3 questions.
Can you hear him okay? Yeah.
Yeah. So where was this dinner yesterday? Was I not invited? But the third one is probably to Xavier. So you obviously, the Orange is their industry for a long time, and you had some sort of digitization already. There were websites and mobile sites, and so you have development base where you were actually solving solutions, and you got infrastructure side of it, providing environments, servers, databases, network connectivity, all that part. So that was working in a fashion earlier, right? And then obviously the Agile transformation and the Lean came in. And I'm assuming your development team jumped onto it first and said, we'll do Agile, Scrum, Lean, Kanban, all those things. What were the changes required, or any top tips you have to basically share with the audience who are here on what changes you made on infra side? Because that was quite siloed, and one by one it has to go from one team to another team, and people were waiting for months before something will come up on which they can test and deploy. But now these teams want to develop software and deploy every 2 weeks or every day or every month or every minute. So what changes you have to bring on infra side, and any top tips you can give us?
Yeah, so you're correct. I mean, again, I don't want to spoil this afternoon, otherwise nobody will listen to me later. And I've got a good story with my daughter, so now you're warned. I think you're right. I mean, we got a legacy, and we build up an infrastructure, and we've got already websites and whatever. So for us, the digital has started long before, and I think we were faced with whatever we call over-the-top a lot of years ago, so we started that process. In a way, I think the IT internally has understood that at one point you have to be API-centric, you have to change your legacy, you are in the process, and it's a CapEx prioritization process also. What we're missing today when I'm trying to fight, because I'm not a technical guy, by the way, I'm just a marketing guy, is how can the marketing teams and the product marketing embrace the real, what I call the lean part, the agility, so that it's even more fluid and smooth with the IT guys. And whenever we're doing that, to be honest, by the way, the IT guy is going to be even more motivated to do that and to invent a way to exactly upgrade on a continuous basis and so on. The difficulty is for the marketing, they were used to make offers, and those offers are like every quarter, and that's it, and then we don't really wait for feedbacks for the customers. So there's a couple of questions behind, which is what kind of competencies those marketing guys need. because for the IT part, again, I'm not, I mean, they're all great DevOps, and I can talk about pivotal DevOps and how it's most this process out for that specific example later today on the SMB segment. But the marketing eye, how do you think in terms of the problematic of the customer? In a way, you're obsessed with customer satisfaction on a daily basis, because we're not that obsessed with customer satisfaction. Well, it's easy to say, I mean, as a network operator, everybody complains against their network operators. That's easy to tell, right? The question is, how do you measure it? How do you want to solve it? And are you ready to reshuffle your processes, but on a marketing basis? And to be honest, it's there's a couple of ways that we are looking into it, like putting the teams all together, as simple as that, in collocated areas, through a pool of competencies, instead of having IT on one side and probably marketing on the other side. Having the marketing embrace agility on a daily basis, and you have to live with it. I mean, you have to live on a specific project to understand it. And it's kind of a beginning of a journey. But I'm less concerned about the IT legacy system. It is. But I'm more concerned about the way marketing can really be obsessed about customer satisfaction, and usually it drives all the rest internally, and it aligns, because we talked about internal alignment. Aligning about customer satisfaction is a great way to align everybody in the end. And that's kind of the process we are going on, to be honest, and it gives, I mean, it raises a number of questions, like people who are going to be there for a specific project, so after this project is done, what's going to happen to them? Are they still going to be allocated to that project to improve it continuously, or will they go to another project? What's going to happen to their competencies and so on? So it's kind of a new way of making projects that we're just, I would say, not discovering, but in a way really living it on a daily basis now.
So just to pick up on what you said there about rotating people on projects, Dieter, when you set up these digital labs that you mentioned, how do you staff the people for those labs? Do you take them from your existing IT functions? Are they new people that you hire? Do they stay permanently within that group, or do you rotate them through the old world and the new world?
Well, I guess that's more for Jochen to answer, yeah. But if you would like to, so come on.
Just throw in the catch box.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So what we do is we totally adopted the pivotal process. So we do the me pairing interview, first part, after the telephone interview, and most of the people we hire from outside. Because at Volkswagen, it's not that easy to find people that are really in developing software as we need it, and having those techniques and skills we need. So we took a bunch of people from our old office. So me and Peter Gassarella, we run the office together. We were responsible for about 100 people there, and we took 6 of them to the Berlin office, and the rest are new hires, and yeah, that's the way we do it.
Cool. What other questions do we have? Jochen, if you could throw it to our next. Yay, okay, thank you. If you could just introduce yourself when you ask your question as well.
Marcus Davis here from Integrella. So I have a question for Dieter and for Xavier. Rob was talking earlier about a trend of companies moving from offshore delivery to kind of more agile teams working in smaller teams. And it seemed like at Volkswagen, you kind of have 2 streams. You have an agile stream and a kind of traditional sort of delivery stream. And I was wondering where you both feel like this is leading. Is it leading to kind of companies going lock, stock to agile delivery? Or do you think there will still be 2 kind of streams there?
Well, from my perspective, the 2 streams will merge. They have to merge. So you can't live with 2 different ITs in your company. It has to be one. So that's the problem with the Gartner model. I've seen for years now that by creating kind of that bimodal theorem, you're creating a divide in your company, and that's not good. So therefore, it has to be agile. It will be agile in the end. So therefore, we have to break down the silos. We have to collaborate across functional domains. And we're in the middle of the process of rearranging and setting up kind of the IT department together with the relevant business departments in kind of a new form of organization. So therefore, that will happen. The second thing, and Jochen touched on that, yeah, I guess in the past, it wasn't seen as a core competency to be a software developer. So I guess, again, the theory was, well, you can buy them for cheap in India. You can outsource, offshore that competency. That's not important. It's more important to manage things, to coordinate things, to do the architecture, but then the nitty-gritty detail work of coding, that's something somebody else can do better and cheaper and more efficiently. And our CIO has seen that that's a problem. So I guess 3 or 4 years ago, he started as part of the new IT strategy with the slogan "Back to Tech." Yeah, that means bringing in technology back into our own ranks, building up technology skills within Volkswagen. So that's an ongoing process, and that's also the reason, for example, why kind of 4 years ago, yeah, when we started with the first cloud technologies, we would have asked suppliers to build that for us and give it to us. Yeah, didn't work well. This time round, when we started a year ago to embrace OpenStack and build our own on-premise group IT cloud, we did it with our own people. That was hard, yeah, because they had to open up to do open source and to learn and to see how that works. But that's the only way to build up the competency. And then maybe in a year or two, we will maybe outsource parts of it again, yeah, to be able to manage that with our limited workforce. Yeah? But you have to have the knowledge in-house. And that's one of the main strategic drivers for us, yeah, to increase the technological skills in our business.
And so on our side, I think, so we don't have, I mean, a big operator, I mean, software is part of its DNA from the beginning, so I think it's very much in-sourced at the moment. What I'm a firm believer, to be honest, is that if you think, for example, customer relationship is one of your core competency, because it's the way to differentiate from the market, either the competitors, the other offerings, and so on, you have to get the IT guys in charge very close to the business. And when I say very close to the business, I say physically speaking. So it cannot be offshore, in a way, because you need that agility. So you don't have a choice, provided that part, customer relationship, it's core of your business. We think it is. It's part of it. Network is in the same way. But customer relationship, so the closer it is to the business, whatever I'm representing or internally, the better, in a way. You don't have a choice. Because the customers are changing every day, to be honest. That's the difficulty. So we have to change systems every day and user interface.
Let's also get Tim's view on this question as well. Tim, do you think Gartner got it wrong with his bimodal approach? What would Ovum have to say about that?
No, I think we had some interesting discussions over dinner last night. I think, Dieter, you know, you showed it very clearly on that slide. I think, you know, the risk is that if you create those two very separate tracks, then you know, I think you're actually creating a new roadblock in some ways to digital becoming more pervasive across the organisation. Having said that, you know, the processes, the culture has to change. So we prefer to think more of something that's blended and that helps that existing organisation come through. So a couple of examples. I think there are parts of the broader sort of IT capability, so things like architecture, governance, and so on, that get very left out in these discussions. And I think, you know, you need to think, for me, from the start, how do those functions need to change? How do we adapt those functions so that they work in this new environment as well? And I think if you can, so it's the sort of transformation that Dieter spoke about. I think if you can work on all of those aspects changing in parallel, I think that's the better way forward.
Yeah, next question at the back there.
Hello? Hello. Roger Kelly, E9 Data. I was just wondering, gents, the changes in thinking that we're hoping to drive. I'm just wondering about the language and the metrics of what comes out of what we do with the data and the processes. We all understand that $10 is better than $9. We've seen some of the larger organizations that started with this culture, like eBay and the Silicon Valley type thing, and how we're trying to defrost the frozen middle. Is there any language developing about how we talk about the value of data? So in just rubbish terms, yesterday we had 1 terabyte, today we've got 2, we're twice as well off. Obviously that's nonsense, but is there any language coalescing? Is there any, are there any words, any metrics that we can use to help the change and the defrosting of the frozen middle?
So I'd like to maybe have Xavier comment on that first, because one of the things Xavier didn't mention is that he's actually a published author. He's written a book on big data, and he's in the process of writing a book on digital transformation. Xavier, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, it's a tough question, to be honest. I'm not sure I will be able to answer automatically. I think there's a couple of things. First, when you talk about data, I think my point overall about digital is it's not a way, it's the way to enhance the user experience. So whatever data we've got in our big organization, how can we leverage on it to enhance the user experience? Having said that, it is true that then data, you don't use to sell it, you don't sell data to third party. It's a different business in a way. You really want people internally to empower them to use that data to say, oh, can it change my processes? Can it change the user experience? It's going to be better because that's what the customer is waiting for. The difficulty that we are having, to be honest, is that you have to work with the data in a different way that you used to. Let's take an example. We talk a lot internally about referential. It's structured data. We're used to that. We build customers. We get fixed number of customers. I always say I've got 2 million SMB customers. 10 years from now, there's still going to be 2 million SMB customers in France. I mean, it's not going to change anyway, unless, well, whatever UK with the Brexit is going to buy France, or I don't know. But still, it should be the same. Talking about interactions, I have probably 1 million interactions. Tomorrow I will have 10 million interactions. So how can I get all my people think about how can I use that to leverage, say, oh, I mean, if I want to track the experience of the people and enhance it, how can I build it? How can I think about it in a different way? And in different way, meanings, machine learning, and probabilities, and so on, which is a different experience in a way. And that's kind of the difficulty. Oddly enough, what I'm using, and it's true, I've published 2 books, my latest being published right now, which is using Hollywood movies to illustrate, in fact, that Hollywood movies already predicted what's happening today on the digital space. So there's a couple of, obviously there's Matrix, Minority Report, and so on. There's things like in the digital space, I mean, predicting what's going to be the future. How can I predict customer satisfaction? How can I predict that the customer is going to call because he's going to complain, for example? And when you ask those questions like that, the technical answers are different. And it's totally different in the process than just saying, oh, my customer just called and he's complaining. Okay, no, before, how can I predict that he's going to complain, and oh, what should I do so that he doesn't call anyway, because it's a cost. So how should I get him notify something that, hey, we're taking care of whatever your complaint, we already anticipated, and for him, that's a great experience. So I'm not sure I'm answering your questions. The thing is, internally, I see that move towards how can I think of the problem of the digital in a different way. And again, I'm using a lot of Hollywood movies analogy. I'm sure I can talk about you during lunch or whatever. But because all industries will have to empower and embrace that in the same way. And that's a different competencies for that. And you need some marketing guys probably that are as obsessed or like a little technical stuff like I do, or math, because you need to think the problem in a different way for the customers.
Let's also get another viewpoint. Rob, you talked earlier about how Pivotal was founded and our mission is to help organizations transform the way they build software. What's the role of data within that mission?
I mean, I think when you're building applications, data is ubiquitous, and inside a cloud platform, you have data services, and applications are using data. I think increasingly we're not describing it as big data versus any other data. It's just how are we using data and how's it coming in and how's it accessed. So I think, for us, we look at it mainly from the aspect of building applications and how is data enhancing that, how are we building smarter applications, and, how are we making that easily consumable from a cloud platform.
So I can kind of draw an analogy with my gym subscription, right? I mean, if I pay my monthly gym subscription, it doesn't mean that I get fitter, right? I only get value from the gym subscription if I actually go and use the gym. So I guess it's the same with data, right? A lot of the discussion is around, how do you store and process and analyze large amounts of data? But actually the bigger value is how do you get the insights from it and how do you operationalize those insights? So we actually have a whole track dedicated to data throughout the day today in the Turing room, which is down the other end of the building. And we have actually some of our world experts on data here in town to deliver some of those sessions. So Domain, just put your hand up. Mike, Ivan, are you around? Les, Frank? They're already in the room, okay. I was going to say go and speak to those people, but Domain is there, and if you go to the data track, which starts after the morning break, then you can get immersed in everything data. Okay, we'll just take one more question, and then we'll take a break. Last question over here, if you'd like to. Oh.
No questions.
Thanks. I'm Matthew Donaldson from HSBC. The question is, with the growth of DevOps allowing teams to sort of move faster and be more autonomous, I'm a developer and occasionally we get it wrong. So how are your organisations embracing failure? Or if you are going to fail, encouraging people to fail fast?
Tim, do you want to have a...
Yeah, I'll have a quick. I think one of the good things that I see is that the culture is much more open to, if not embracing failure, then learning from failure. So I think it's a really good thing that it's accepted that sometimes we will fail, and I think. Rob, you've mentioned it, and it came up in your video as well, Dieter. I think provided that one's very transparent and open about that failure and learn from it, I think that actually makes it a positive thing. That would be my
James, take. I just wanted to bring you in there on the end, because I think you've worked in both worlds, right? You've come from large established organizations where the attitude towards risk and change and failure is maybe different to where you are now at FinTech. Is that the case, or do you see a greater appetite for that?
Yeah, look, having been at HSBC as well, so I think the appetite for failure is still a challenge at every large cap institution, because the measures of success of the CTO and CIO are based on productivity and delivery and execution. And I still think that the measures, to the earlier point about what we're trying to achieve, aren't based on endpoint success. They're based on programmatic kind of success. So the ability to spin small, MVPs up or whatever and fail fast and turn those things over, that's not a successful metric. I think if you, and Rob will attest, I'm sure, if you spend a bunch of time in Silicon Valley with venture capital guys, they want to see you to have failed before they'll invest in you. And I think that's the kind of mentality that we have to start adopting across the enterprise. If you do that from a business standpoint, you learn from failure. We need to do that from a development standpoint as well. Mm-hmm. I think the COOs of most of these large institutions are still under mass pressure to perform against number and to reduce cost point, and therefore there's not a place currently for fast fail. But I think there's a readying understanding of that, and that only actually happens if the board supports that as an opportunity. There's a lot of notional support of those sorts of words, like of course we want to fail fast and learn from those experiences.
Yeah.
But then the reality kind of kicks home and they say, well, yeah, but this quarter's numbers look like they're in the ditch, and, you know, therefore take cost out, you know, focus on delivery execution, like the reverting back to type based on market performance is always the challenge. You know, and CIOs used to be under multi-year kind of measures, and now they're on in-year measures, and now they're on in-quarter measures. So, so the kind of myopic kind of focus is really driven down to time. And so the more that we can have education to broaden measures of success will hopefully allow us to then focus on MVPs.
Yeah.
You know, we're lucky in a fintech, you know, that we can fail fast. You know, we're a small team, but we're working with large institutions that are using us to help them fail fast, which is not the right way, but it's kind of a step forward for a lot of, you know, asset managers to say, okay, well, if we test these things in an agile environment, you know, using Pivotal, you know, almost as an ancillary, that gives us an opportunity to prove that thing out. But look, you know, this isn't me pitching us. I think the reality is it needs to happen in-house. Otherwise, the thing will continue to, you know, to be a challenge.
Okay.
By the way, Faiz, I think we're out of time.
Yeah.
If I can just finish this very, very quickly. We had a media roundtable. The minister and I did a little media roundtable, and I was asked one question that was really great that I'm almost never asked. He said, "You keep talking about all of the disruption and how you're helping companies, you know, work through disruption or become the disruptors. What about yourselves? Are you ever disrupted?" And I said, "You have no idea." and I think a lot of that comes down to, you know, we're having lots of little failures all the time, and we have to recover from those and do something, you know, new and shift direction. And, you know, he said, "How do you cope with it?" And I said, well, if we weren't using all of these techniques ourselves that we're teaching to all of our customers, we'd be dead. There's no way we could survive this. It's incredibly fast-moving technology environment. We're being continuously disrupted. So that was sort of my, I thought it was a great question. I don't know if anyone's ever asked me that before. But anyway.
Okay. We are out of time, so we'll close the Q&A session there.